Now that we understand that most of the content here inside of the head element will not be displayed by the browser, let's talk more about the different metadata content that you can include inside of the head element. We can see here the meta charset with the value of assigned value of UTF-8. This is telling the browser that this is the character set or encoding it has to use to display the content. So when we say character sets, these are standards that were developed by programmers way back before. These are standards that have been agreed upon by computer programmers way back before who formulated these rules and standards so that the computer will be understanding the ones and the zeros of bits and bytes of information and instructions that we are giving it. Again, in computer science, computers can only understand what we call the binary language, which is usually in an on and off form or described by ones and zeros instructions. Remember that computer data is stored in binary data in electronics. When we say binary, this is also referred to as the machine language, which represents the most fundamental level of information which is stored in the computer system. On a physical level, the zeros and ones are stored in the central processing unit or CPU of a computer system using transistors. So to standardize the storing of code, we have the American Standard Code for Information Interchange, also known as ASCII, that supported numbers from 0 to 9 and A to Z, and special characters such as exclamation mark, $, plus, minus, open and close parentheses, the @ sign, the greater than, the less than, and even the period. So since ASCII only used 7 bits for the character, it can only represent 1 to 8 different characters. And that is the greatest weakness, that it excluded non-English letters. So for HTML5 in web development, we use the UTF-8 character set that we have here. Before, the character set that was used was ASCII from HTML 2.0 to HTML 4.01. Now for HTML5 or even the XML, or as you remember, Extensible Markup Language, UTF-8 was used, and this was really able to solve a lot of character encoding problems. The HTML meta charset attribute helps display the HTML page correctly by telling the browser, giving instructions to the browser on what character set is used by your page. In HTML5, it was made very simple. Right now, we only need to type this very short charset declaration here. But before, we had to go and type this very long charset declaration, such as this one. Okay? We have to specify the charset using the HTTP equivalent content type and even declare the content text or HTML declaration here or value here for the content attribute. Using the HTTP equivalent attribute here is still allowable, but as I've said, don't make your life so difficult. You don't need to go and do this long declaration anymore. So we only need less code right now in HTML5. So there are other things that you have to keep in mind when we are using metadata. Metadata can really help out with SEO, search engine optimization. It will not be displayed, but it will be machine parsable. All of the metadata that you will be placing here in general should be placed in between the opening and the closing tag, head element tag. One keynote to remember when you're using metadata will be just add those that are relevant that can help improve your website's performance. So there are other metadata that we can actually include into our document here. We can also include the document description or the metadata for description. So we have the value, the attribute name, and then we give it a value of description. Right, that is how it is typed here. We have the content, and we can put here, let's say this is about original stories, kid stories. So the website that we will be creating will be more about original kid stories. You can put here, this is travels. This this is, let's say, travel blog. Okay, but for this website, I would want original kid stories. So this will be able to help search engines indexing your web page for searching purposes. So it will be helping out the search engines such as Google, Bing to index your web page. So there are also metadata that we can use for document revision that gives information about when was the last time the document was updated. This information will be useful for various web browsers while refreshing your web page. So that can be in this format. So meta name, assign the value of revised, and then you can put the content here. Let's say RTech 2020 or RTech today is June 17, year 2020, or you can use a much simpler RBSL DevTech Solutions. Today is June. You can use numbers 06, it's 17 and 2020. So you can go and put some additional information inside of your meta tag. We can also include metadata that will be helping out in refreshing your document. Usually this can be used to specify a duration after which your web page will be automatically refreshing. So we can do this way. Meta HTTP equiv with assign the value of refresh, and you can also put content here with the value of 5 seconds. Let's say 5 seconds. By the way, if you're going to be using XHTML or extensible hypertext markup language, it's a much stricter version of HTML. You will need to put self-enclosing tags here. Okay, this is going to be if you want your document to be compatible with XHTML. I just wanted you to know that. It's good that you also know that if ever you will be entering into the development of XHTML websites, that will be a good information to know. Okay, so it's a much stricter. So here we have here empty element. Meta tags are empty elements or void elements. We'll talk about that in a different lesson, but for you to know, empty element doesn't have any closing tag, as you can see here, unlike the title tag that we have here. So by the way, let me just go and show you this, guys. Let's go and try to open our document. So if I'm going to go and refresh this, okay, you see that it has refreshed. 1, 2, 3. It's refreshing on its own, right? So let's go and check if it will be working here in our document here. Okay, so it's refreshing on its own because of the refresh content metadata information that we included in our document. We also have the meta tag for page redirection, and this will allow you to redirect your page to another web page. And you can also specify the duration, similar with the refresh value that we have here. We just need to add the URL to the website that we want our page to be redirected. So let's say I would want it to be redirected to twitter.com. So I'm just going to put Twitter here and then try to control save this. And if we go to our document here, okay, you would see here that once we wait for it to refresh on its own, let me just refresh it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you will see it's redirecting to the Twitter web page, even though I did not click on the URL of Twitter. So again, that's one use of the metadata content that we have here for page redirection. We also have what we call the meta tag for setting the author name of the web page. So you just need to go and declare here meta name and then add the value author and then add the content here. So type your name. So for me, Rodrigo Bonzer Lopez. So that will be the setting the author name for your web page. And you can also set the keyword for certain for the improvement and optimization of your page for search engines. It will be good that you also include what we call the meta tags for keyword. So we have the meta name, assign the value of keywords, and content will be, you have to be very careful with the keywords that you will be using. For SEO, you have to look for keywords that are not often used by people when they are searching for your websites. You also need to use words that are not that competitive in the internet. Let's say, for example, it's quite competitive if you will be using the word tutorial. So it should be a keyword that will be unique in a way when you are describing your website. You have to use descriptions that will be directly explaining what your website is all about, and use words that can distinguish your websites from other websites when people search for it. So for this website project that we will be building, I would want to go and use the idea that this is going to be kid stories. It will be original kid stories for kid stories. So technically these are keywords that if I'm a user and I am searching for a website from where my children can read some kid stories, we can put here free stories for kids, stories for improving reading of kids. So technically these are keywords that you use for searching for your website. One keynote is to maximize the use of keywords that will be distinguishing your website from other websites. And something that is also recommended will be to, as much as possible, don't do the thing that I just did here. Maximize the use of at least only 3 keywords if possible. Maximize the use of keywords that are short, and let's say free stories for kids, stories for improving reading of kids. Because if you have too many keywords, it can lead to keyword stuffing, from where Google tends to downgrade the rankings for pages. So as much as possible, keeping your number of keywords inserted in this field will be between 1 to 3 keywords only. I know that this has been a long lecture, and to wrap things up here, I just want to go and comment out this part of the head element, the metadata that we included for refreshing and then redirecting to a different page. And let's talk about the viewport meta tag. So if you're asking what is the viewport, this is the user's visible area of a web page. Let me just go and open our document here. So the viewport is the whole page that we can see here that is being occupied by the browser in our device. So this can vary depending on the device. It can be smaller if you're using a mobile device, or bigger if you're using a computer screen. So in history, before the tablets and before the mobile phones, web pages were designed for computer desktop screens. And it was really common for web designers to design the page or a web page using a static design or a fixed size. But when we started using tablets and mobile phones, fixed size web pages were too large to fit the viewport of these small devices. So web designers introduced in HTML5 the use of the meta tag for the viewport so that we can take control over the viewport when we are resizing. So let's say we have here the developer tools. Let's open it up. and we open up here the testing responsive design mode, or Control Shift plus M. In Chrome, it also has a developer tool. The good thing about here will be you can test out even if you don't have other devices in your hand, or let's say you don't personally own a iPad or an iPhone. You can try to test out the size of your web page when you're already building your website for responsiveness. Remember, there are three good pillars for a good web design. One will be responsiveness. Second will be maintainability and scalability in the future. And of course, web performance. So now the viewport meta tag here provides us the option for us to be able to test out, or for us to be able to scale our viewport easily through different devices. So in our document, in our project here, we have here under the meta viewport tag, the meta tag for viewport should always be included in all of your web pages. And if we try to look at the content attribute here, it has the with device dash with value. So this is the one that sets the width of the page so that it will be following the screen width of the device, which will vary depending on the size of the device. An initial scale, assign the value of 1.0, will be setting the initial zoom level when the page is first loaded by the browser.